Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Monica, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a 35-year veteran script supervisor. Now, today we're going to go over the difference between a voiceover and off-screen dialogue, and we'll also touch on a little bit of what a pre-lap is as well, and how important it is that you make note of these when you're doing your breakdown. All right, and we're also going to go over how to line your script when you're doing a phone conversation. So when you're doing off-screen dialogue, and also how to credit your page count and your timing for it as well. All right, so we have a lot to go over today, so let's dive in. Okay, so when you start to work on a script, you're going to be running into one of these scenarios eventually. All right, so the first one being a voiceover. So, a voiceover, in the definition of that, really is a narration that comes from outside the visual scene. So, it's actually, for example, a phone call or somebody talking on a walkie-talkie or somebody narrating a scene. Okay, so it's actually happening outside of the scene itself. Then we have something that is off screen. All right, now something that is off screen is happening within the scene. All right, so for example, for example, the character A is looking out the window, all right, and he's on screen, and then you have character B from behind him saying, "What are you looking at?" All right, so that would be considered off screen because it's within the scene itself. And then another scenario of something off screen would be, say, like a toilet flushing. All right, so it's within the scene, but it's off screen because you're hearing the toilet flush. All right. Another one would be a pre-lap, and a pre-lap, for the most part, works in conjunction with, say, an off-screen dialogue. So the pre-lap is basically is when the audio from the next scene starts before the current scene ends visually. So a pre-lap always starts at the beginning of the scene because it's pre-lapping the scene before. All right. So for example, say you have a scene where it's the ocean, and then all of a sudden you hear somebody reading a book over the ocean, and then all of a sudden it cuts to the person reading the book. So that's the overlap. It's overlapping the scene. All right. Okay. So those are the three scenarios that you would have when it comes to off-screen dialogue. Okay, so now I'm going to walk you through how to line a script for when you're doing a voiceover. All right, so this is from a show that I just finished, my last show actually. This Is Us, and this is a conversation between Deja and Randall. All right, so let's look at this. Okay, so here we are in the scene that we're going to be shooting, and the first shot that we're going to be doing is of Randall, scene 26. It's a close up of Randall, and it's the interior Hard Rock Casino floor. All right, and it's going to go into the next scene, which is where Deja is at the exterior New Jersey street, and we're going to be lining our script all the way down through the whole conversation. We're putting a squiggly line for all of Deja's conversation because she's not there. It's a voiceover of her in another location. So that's why there's squiggly lines for all of her dialogue. So when we go to credit this scene today, we're going to credit a full credit for scene 26 because it's all Randall for that scene 26, and we're going to credit him 1/8 of a page. All right. Now, say in scene 27, we're only going to credit partially for that because we're only going to credit half of that scene. So when I go to credits a scene, so for example, say page 25 here, it shows 3/8 of a page. Now I can't do half of that. So I'm going to look at that scene and I'm going to say, okay, who has the lion's share of that scene? And it looks like Randall does. So I'm going to give him 2/8 of a page credit for that scene. And then I'm going to leave open 1/8 of a page for Deja. And then the next page over, that's 4/8, and that's pretty equal there. So I'm going to give that another 2/8 of a page. So 2/8 and 2/8, that's 4/8 of a page that I'm going to be crediting for scene 27 today. Okay. So now when we go to credit the time, we're going to credit obviously we have our stopwatch or our phone, whatever you use for your timing. We're going to take an average. So whenever we do a scene, we're going to average out, how much that scene took to do. So say, for example, say the whole scene took 43 seconds, all right, from beginning to end, and you have somebody else, reading the off-screen dialogue. Now that may be you or that may be somebody else, but the timing of that person is going to be very different than Deja's timing. But we don't know what her timing is yet, so we're just going to give it the time that Randall is taking to do that scene. So what I mean by that is whatever conversation he has with whoever's reading those lines is the time you're going to get. So say it's 43 seconds. We're going to give it a 43 seconds, time. Now, how do you divide that up between 26 and 27? You kind of figure, okay, so scene 26 only took like 3 or 4 seconds, whatever. So you just give that 3 or 4 seconds, and then you give the remaining time for the rest of the scene. So that's how you're going to credit that scene. The other thing you want to make note of: what hand does he have on the phone, and also which way is he looking? He's looking camera right. So you want to make sure that you make note of that, so that when you go to shoot Deja, she's actually looking the other direction. Or you want to advise the director, well, Randall was looking camera right in this scene, so we have to make sure she's looking the opposite direction, because you want to make sure that they're kind of looking at each other, right? So that's screen direction, which we'll go over in another video. But this is one thing you have to make sure of. You want to make sure what direction they're looking at, so that you know what you're going to be matching in the next scene. So let's look at Deja's side now. Okay, so now we're on Deja's side, and we are going to be calling this scene 27, because now we're in the exterior New Jersey street. All right, so when you get the call sheet, most likely it'll probably say part 26 and part 27, or it may just say part 27, because the AD knew that you were already crediting scene 26, so it's not going to put it on the call sheet. But it may be on there. So if it is on the call sheet, you're going to make sure that, because you credited full scene yesterday's scene 26, you're going to make sure that in the notes you put credited scene 26 on such and such a date. Because if it's on the call sheet, most likely they're going to come and say, well, what happened to scene 26? Why didn't you credit anything? Well, you're going to say, look at the notes. I credited it yesterday. And you can't credit something twice, all right? Because then you're going to have double the time, double the pages, and then your page count and time at the end of the script is not going to come out, okay? You're going to end up more time than it actually took. So here again, let's go back to our scene 27, where this is a close-up of Deja, and then of course we do our lines, and all we're doing is we're just doing the opposite of what we did on scene 26, where instead of the squiggly line going on Deja, now it's on Randall, because Randall's not there now. Now, you're going to have somebody doing the off-screen lines for Randall now. But say now when you do Deja's side, Deja is taking a little bit longer time to talk, or maybe she's doing something, and it's taking her longer for her dialogue to come out. And when you do the timing of this scene, say instead of 43 seconds, it comes out to 55 seconds, all right? So what you're going to, and you do it 3 times, you get an average, and it's pretty much coming out the same. It's taking longer on Deja's side than it is on Randall's side. So what you're going to credit that is not 55 seconds because you credited 43 seconds yesterday, right? So what you're going to do is credit the difference. You're going to subtract the 43 seconds that you credited yesterday from or the time that you do whatever is greater. Okay, so today it's taking longer, so it was 55 seconds. Then you're going to subtract yesterday's timing, which was 43 seconds, which leaves you with 12. So that's the time that you're going to credit for scene 27, because that's the difference of the scene. So you want to make sure that you get the true timing of both those scenes. So it's as if both of them were actually talking to each other, in the scene, but because you had somebody else to saying the off-screen line, it's not, going to come out true. So you want a true timing. All right. And then, of course, you want to make sure that in her side, she's looking the opposite direction. So she's looking camera left, right? So when you put those two pieces of film together, they're talking, to each other, not in the same direction. Say if I had both of them looking camera right, it doesn't look like they're looking at each other. They both look like they're looking off screen somewhere. So you want to make it as though they're looking at each other. So that's obviously that's ultimately up to the director, but you have to advise them on the screen direction. He was looking camera right in his shot. So do you want her to look camera left? And that's his call. Okay, so that's how you credit a scene when you're doing a phone conversation. And this is just an example of a simple screen direction like I was talking about. So the first example, you have both of them looking at each other, right? That's correct. So if you have them looking the same direction, like in example 2, they're both looking camera right. It doesn't look like they're having a conversation with each other, right? And the same thing goes with example number 3. They're both looking camera left. So you want them to be looking at each other. So this is, again, screen direction, and this is the basics of a phone conversation. You always want to have them looking at each other. Okay, so now let's look at what you should really be looking at when you're doing your breakdown. Okay, so now I want to talk to you about the importance of making sure that you make a note of where these voiceovers are in the script, also your pre-lapse and your off-screen dialogue, or whatever sound effects or whatever it is, so that you can make sure that you get those when you're actually filming. All right, and this is a good example right here, because, for example, this scene is actually the same scene we did previously, but in the next episode. Okay, so for example, when we were shooting Randall in the Hard Rock Casino, Deja was actually in several different locations, but we didn't see that in the previous episode. We only saw that in this episode. So, for example, scene 98, it's the Hard Rock Casino. And then we have scene 99, it's interior Shauna's apartment living room. And then 100 is Shauna's apartment kitchen. 101, Shauna's hallway. 102 is exterior Newark Street. And then 103 is interior Shauna's car. All right. So all of Deja's phone conversation was taking place while she was getting stuff from the apartment, and she was packing stuff up, and then she walks down the street, and then she gets in the car and she finishes her conversation there. So you have all of this dialogue happening in different parts, in different locations. So you have to make sure that you get all of those pieces, because otherwise that phone conversation isn't going to make sense if you're missing a voiceover. All right, so that's really important. And then we have our pre-lap. And like I said before, our pre-lap is usually in conjunction with an off-screen line. Now, in this situation, they put voiceover. All right. Now, if you remember, the definition of voiceover is a line that happens outside of the scene. All right. And an off-screen line is a line that's happening within the scene. So really, this is mislabeled. It should be an off-screen line, not a voiceover, because when you continue the dialogue, it's Nikki saying, "I don't do goodbyes, my dear. I'm more of a see you later kind of guy." And then we go into Rebecca's bedroom where Nikki has Rebecca's hand, and he continues his conversation. So that is all part of within the scene, right? So it's really considered an off-screen line, but they labeled it VO, and sometimes they will intermix it, you know. But you know the truth. You know the true definition, and if somebody asks you now, you can tell them, what the difference is. Now, the one thing that's very important when you're working with prelapse is that, again, when you're doing your breakdowns, you want to make note of where all those prelaps are, where the off screens are, where the voiceovers are. But the reason you want to know where the prelaps are is because, say, for example, this scene 45 was at the top of the page. All right. And when they give out the sides for that scene that day, they usually only give out the sides for the scenes that you're doing that day. And if scene 45 was at the top of the page, that first line would have been on the previous page, page 46. This is page 47. It would have been on page 46, and you would be missing that line. And if you didn't make a note of it, that, hey, there's an additional line there that we have to get, for scene 45, they may miss it. And it's happened before where we've basically missed a line because the sides only had the scenes we were doing, and we didn't get that pre-lap line. So that's why it's important for you to make sure that you know that there's a pre-lap coming up. So when you get those sides, and you see on there that's like, wait a minute, there's a voiceover here, there's a off-screen line here that's not listed in the sides, to let the actors know and the director know that, hey, there's a pre-lap here that we have to get, when we're shooting this. All right. So it's real important for that. Okay, so I know that was a lot of information and it might be a little confusing, but when you actually start working with these voiceovers, you'll know what I'm talking about. And like I said, that's why when you do your homework and you do make note of where these voiceovers are and these off-screen dialogues and these prelaps are in your script when you're doing your breakdown. That way you'll know that you're getting everything, and you want to make sure you get everything when you have the actors there, because if, say, the actor's only there for that one day and then he's on a plane tomorrow, off to do their other project, you've lost that actor, and they can't go back and do that, or they're going to have to come in and do some ADR to cover those lines, and you don't want to do that, because then they're going to look at you and say, hey, why didn't you let us know that we had to do these voiceovers? Just so make sure that you make a note of where they are and when you're going to be shooting those, so that you get them all at the same time. All right. Okay, so that's it for now. And again, I hope I've helped you. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about what I've covered, and subscribe. See you on the next one. Bye.